farming used to be the most noble profession on earth, and it's now got the highest suicide rate of any profession. And I've always thought, like, okay, how to put nobility back into rural stewardship? How do I get some kid from Stockholm to think it's cool to come out here in the middle of nowhere and do this and work really hard? People are starved for connection and rootedness to a place. And I think that's also the future that I can see for food businesses. It's like connection to place. I feel like I learn more than any university could ever teach. I have to be a physicist, a chemist, a biologist, an electrician, everything. I don't have to be expert at anything. I have to be competent at a lot of stuff. And I love that. There's this constant drive to innovate. And I sort of started sitting back more in life feeling we don't need more solutions. It's like we already have solutions. I've lost my interest in staying on the edge of all the new things that come, because it's like we know how to grow vegetables. It's not rocket science to grow vegetables. It's not rocket science to raise beef. Just get on with it and let's eat nice food. And I guess yeah, I'm just getting old and grumpy farmer stage now.
Welcome to the Market Gardener podcast, where we believe that small-scale farming is changing the world. Join us for insightful conversations with people who are working to build a better future. A future with less mass production and more production by the masses. The revolution is in the field. Let's get digging. This podcast is proudly supported by Tessier Greenhouses. If you've been enjoying the show so far, make sure to hit the subscribe button. It's a small thing to do, but for us, it means the world. The subscribe button allows us to keep promoting the show. It allows us to keep inviting new guests, more diverse guests, to have these enlightened conversations. Let's keep these conversations going. Help us by subscribing to the channel. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we have a really special guest. And it's our first time doing a conference that's like a Visio conference, because our guest is from Sweden and some of the listeners obviously know who he is. We had a first take at this, take at this, and then it broke down. But we had a really good conversation, Richard, last week, and this week we're continuing it. So Richard Perkins is our guest, and we're really excited to have you on the podcast, Richard.
Great to be here. Thanks, Jam. Thanks, Chris.
We dressed alike for you today, so
kind of a funny Canadian tuxedo situation, a little bit. Is there a Swedish tuxedo? There should be. Shall I open this up?
Yeah, let's shoot.
All right. So, Richard, I've heard you say before that chefs and people in the health and fitness industry are the loudest voices to the public in regards to our food and the food system and how we eat. And that if we want to change food, these are actually the people that we need to get on board. And I thought this was a really huge idea because in my own past, I was in the fitness industry, and when I transitioned into the world of farming, it's quite shocking how much people whose entire lives revolve around health and wellness and good eating don't think a moment about farms or farming or how any food is grown. You know, it's all about superfoods and supplements, and we've talked about that before, but it's so clear. When I heard you say that, it was like, oh yes, of course, that is 100%, I think, a huge way to go forward. So can you talk to that a bit, why that is present in your mind and how you see that in your work?
Sure. Yeah, I guess that comes off the back of spending my entire adult life speaking to people about farming and getting, when we run farm tours here, we get old ladies in their 80s crawling in the pasture, looking through cow paddies at the dung beetle and talking about the life cycle of a cow paddy, which they've probably never done before in their life. And I think it's important that us as farmers, particularly those of us that are good communicators, to tell stories. I mean, it's stories that change the world, and I've been doing that all my life. But I think where it's come from for me is just seeing through some conversations I've had with very famous chefs who maybe have followings of 10, 20 million people on Instagram. And it's like, you know, even those of us that are very well known in the farming world, it's still extremely niche. And you've got people who are on, you know, everybody's kitchen shelves in their books or in their TV sets or whatever that can speak in a much more simple, direct way to the average person. Because something I've also noticed through marketing farm produce is people care, but they only care so much, or they, maybe a better way to say is they only have a limited window for interest and attention span of the sort of technical geeky things that we get really inspired by. You know, I've just seen how, for example, our pastured eggs are marketed. And when I go to a store here in Sweden, you know, there's one other brand of organic mass-produced eggs here. And if you go on their website, you will see, well, an even better example is the meat chickens that we produce, because there's one other organic chicken producer in Sweden they're on a commercial scale. But when you go on their website, there's a picture of a hen with the grass waving, the sun going down. Is not even the type of chicken they raise for meat. It's like, it's totally bonkers. And they would never show you the production facilities, whereas I show people in our slaughtering facilities, like everywhere, we're very transparent as a way of direct consumer relating and trust building. And what I noticed is when I moved to Sweden here, there's this thing about local here. People aren't so interested in organic, although that's growing all the time, but they're really interested in local. So the local industrial pig farm is good because it's local. It's just an industrial pig farm. It's like there's nothing particularly interesting about it. And I noticed that in the way sort of people seem to relate to food here. It's like if the egg box is green and it's got a nice picture of happy chicken on the front, then consumer turns brain off and carries on, you know. So I just see that there's quite a limited window to sort of engage with people. Whereas if you're sitting around the dinner table talking with the family around food or watching a cooking show or, you know, like getting together to cook a meal together, that's where the attention span is, I think. And I just see that some of the chefs that, you know, I've talked to have such huge followings, and their passion is really in the sort of food experience more than, you know, all of the steps behind it. And even some of those chefs who are interested in production, they still only get it a little bit. And I've noticed this, like in some of the bigger global podcasts with, you know, regenerative agriculture has become forefront in many of the bigger global platforms, but it's like people don't quite get it. They're scratching the surface of something, but they, you know, there's a big gap between those of us that really geek out on the sort of nuts and bolts of ecological thinking and the way that interfaces with the public. So I really felt like, yeah, chefs and fitness industry, that's where we could make the biggest impact, because I've always been a storyteller and that's part of my work with education and writing and things like that. But we don't need to be everything. I mean, you know, we need other people at different places in society supporting that whole network of things, I think. And I guess that's really what led to the purchase of the restaurant in our village here. It's like wanting to start collaborations where we bring, you know, people in who can tell that food story and connect it directly to the farm and ecology. And I've had some different thoughts as we start that up about directions we'll take with that.
Richard,
to be able to reach a totally different audience.
We'll get to that, because that was the one of the main reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because, you know, you started a restaurant and it's kind of like really in the footsteps of what we're doing. So this is really exciting. But just for the listeners that perhaps don't know so much about you and the work that you've been doing in the last, 10, 15 plus years. I've known about you, and I've known you for 7 years. We met, we reminded ourselves that we met in Germany a while ago. We want to just like talk about Ridgedale Farm, where it is, what it does. what's kind of like, how do people know about you, and what are you about?
Sure. Well, I guess I had been working for over a decade before I came to Ridgedale. It's a small farm in Sweden. I started out my journey in commercial vegetable production at 18. I went to agricultural college in the UK, and that really, essentially, I learned traditional organic horticulture. And it left me with more questions than answers. And it felt like this is the same syllabus that has been taught for probably 4 decades. So that stimulated me to go looking for interesting farms around the world, and particularly in agroforestry and livestock production. And I kind of worked in my early 20s in vegetable productions in the organic sector in the UK, working extremely hard for very low pay. And I kind of felt my farming journey is not going to include vegetables beyond for home consumption in the future, because there's easier ways to make a living. You're actually, Jam, a big reason why we actually started up commercial veg production again. And, the work you've put forth and the tools that have come around in more recent years have made that worth considering again for someone like myself. But I worked all over the world with farm and land planning, and settled in Sweden kind of by accident, really. But Sweden is an unusual country in Europe. It's still affordable to buy land here, which is not the case in most of Europe. It's like the big issues for people in the European context, which is similar to probably your situation too, is young people don't have money. All the farms and land is locked up in older farmers' debt, essentially. So they can't get out of the game and young people can't get in. And it's a major problem. And so when I arrived in Sweden, I was coming here for 2 weeks just to run a training to help an old friend, and looked around at the farm I was teaching on outside Stockholm. And it's like you can buy a farm of 30, 40 acres for the price of a garage that you park your car in the UK. So,
Wow.
so I just happened to stay around. And I felt like it didn't really matter to me where I landed, because I had a global audience and I knew people would be coming to the farm. And I wanted to set up a farm that had two distinct functions. One, to be a profitable farm that regenerated the landscape and the ecosystem and made us a good living. And equally as important, I wanted to create a learning platform for a new generation of farmers where they could learn, well, essentially all the things I had to travel around learning in different places, all in the same hub. And so our farm is a traditional diverse mix farm, sort of like you would read in Das Agriculture 2,500 years ago. It's primarily based on pasture and livestock with agroforestry and small amounts of annuals. So we've been producing pastured eggs and pastured meat chickens and turkeys, and no dig market garden vegetables as our three primary enterprises, and set up a business plan to build a farm and pay off all our debts and mortgage in the first 5 years. On the side of that, we've been running pastured beef and mutton and lamb, as well as forest raised pigs. And now the agroforestry systems start coming in. There's a lot of perennial crops coming up above the pasture. And yeah, it's been a super productive farm for a very small farm. We're only about with 13 hectares, that's 32 acres, which wouldn't even be considered a farm in most of the Western world. But it's amazing what you can produce in a very small area. And we're in pretty similar climate zones to yourselves. We're quite far north. We're 59 degrees north, which I guess is up near Whitehorse over in Yukon or somewhere like that.
Yeah, it's super. It's like Arctic.
Yeah, we're subboreal. I mean,
Yeah,
it's an extreme place to start a farm. We have 115 days without frost, give or take 30 days either way. It's pretty rough, but I like it. It's kind of reminds me of the tropics where we go from winter to summer with a very quick transition. Spring and autumn are very short, and it's kind of summer for a few weeks and then it's winter most of the time, which is probably a bit similar to where you are there. So that's what we've been up to. And then we do a lot of work educating young people we've been running very intensive long-term trainings and providing a springboard for people going off to set up similar sort of operations, mixed farms, all over the world, but particularly in Europe and more in Scandinavia now, which is fantastic.
Was education and kind of getting the public involved, and particularly, I guess, YouTube, because I think you do have quite a following via YouTube, as far as I know. Was that part of the original intention of starting the farm when you started, or did it kind of come along with it?
It's a little bit the intention. I guess I was quite early on YouTube, and I haven't been really working with that the last years, but I kept it as a kind of vlog for me.
Yeah.
And things change so fast when you start, orchestrating multiple species at high density through an ecosystem. So I wanted to document my journey for myself. I've got an incredible backlog of about 50 terabyte hard drives of photos and videos of every single day of the last 10 years here. I'll probably never look at it again, but it's there as a record if I want to. And it's magical to have that, to look back at things and also to see. I obviously documented my children growing up, and that's been very beautiful. But I've really enjoyed that journey because I've treated it kind of selfishly. I've always been I've had a healthy relationship with social media where it's like, hey, I've got lots of information to share, but it's on my terms. I'm not playing a YouTube game and I'm not going to put much of my time to this. It's like, you have to go through it if you want to find the information. I'm not going to make 5 best ways to grow radish. Just that I do not care.
You're not
about
doing
this
the
kind of
JM thing.
Well, maybe you got a whole team to help you, but I've been, rocking out these things on my own in my spare time, and that's kind of the rules I set up for myself really early. It's like, this is not gonna eat into my time. I'm not gonna set up a camera on a tripod, and it's like I'm just taking my phone out while I'm doing this, and then it doesn't take up any of my time, and then I'm willing to do that, and I know it's benefited thousands of people to do like that. And so that's been it's been healthy.
Yeah.
I knew that we would get along, you and I, Richard, when we met in Germany. That was the year that I was really running FQT Farm, my training farm, and I had apprentice with me for 2 years, so it was solid bonds with people and really into the aspiration of really being a mentor to these folks. And when I met you, what stuck out is that you had your group of all these interns or apprentices that had been to your farm. It probably was around 15 of them. You guys were all in circle, and then everyone was going over where they're at, what they were doing, and I remember that very clearly. Everyone held you in so high esteem. It was important that you guys connected that time together, and I was like, okay, this guy for me is the real deal, and you gained so much respect for me when I saw that, because I do think that that's what this is all about. This work that we're doing as educator and communicators, but ultimately, it's not just information. It's creating these relationships. It's being present for others. It's mentoring. It's learning, teaching.
Yeah, thanks for that memory. I remember you took a beautiful photo actually then. That was when we were in Kiel at the workshop we gave that. Yeah, that was very nice. And what was very special about that moment was actually because a lot of people had showed up because you were coming, obviously, also. But it was actually different people from 5 different years at the farm. So I had circled them up so that I could introduce them to each other as a network. And some of those, there's one farm in Germany was set up entirely by 3 different years of employees and interns from this farm. And it's still going strong. It's really nice. So that's always been really important to me is, like you have the same experience when you're working with people for a year or 2 years. Sometimes people have come here 3, 4 years, 5 years, and you really know that person well enough that they would work really well with that person that you met the year before. And so I've always tried to set people up in those relationships, and quite a lot of farms in Europe have been set up in that way, where I've put people together as a sort of startup team, and that's really special. And that's led to a bit more like we had a big reunion last summer, and it's something I want to start doing now. We have the restaurant venue, we have a bit more space and rooms to host people, but to do a bit more of that networking, to have people specifically speaking the same language. Like everyone that's been through my trainings has a similar sort of exposure to pattern languages that we can speak in a much clearer, direct way about any particular topic. And so I'm really trying to leverage those possibilities because it's really powerful. And I think you'll have the same experience, I'm sure. It's like one of the big problems for people is that the farming life is kind of isolated, and even if you are well networked, it's like people tend to be far away, and it's quite hard to get away to like actually physically meet up and be in the same space. But it's important to share, what's going well, but to also share difficulties. And I've noticed over the years, there's always cycles that people go through in the startup phase or in the having kids phase, or we need that support from each other. And I think doing that in person, when people have a shared sort of pattern language of how they think about different parts of farm life, it's really powerful. So it's really nice.
I must say a reunion of farm crew members is such a great idea, particularly because for anyone especially if you're the host farmer, it's your farm and you're hosting people, sometimes those bonds can get so tight that it's at one point during the season, it's hard to believe that person's going to leave. You're like, wait, what? Isn't this, aren't we going to be working together? Aren't you part of the team now? But you're just here for the season. I don't know if you've all had that experience, but I sure have. So I like that idea.
Oh, we definitely get that, because we're like, I don't know, people that are familiar with my farm, you've maybe seen drone footage or whatever, but people live in my back garden, and it's pretty intense. I mean, the first years when we bootstrapped the farm, it's like we used our house kitchen as the commercial kitchen. So we couldn't even come into our commercial kitchen in the beginning because that was against the regulations. We had to come in the back door, and I couldn't get through to my office until after the cook had left for the day. There was a bit of a nightmare, but we all live very close. And I think I guess it's quite an exposed life. We're working outdoors physically in all weathers, and it puts people way out of their comfort zone. And we're living in very close quarters. We wash together, we eat together. Like we have sauna in Sweden, so every day the sauna is on, and that's where a lot of collaborations and ideas and trauma sessions happen, whatever it is. There's a lot of bonding in a very small space, in a very outdoor lifestyle. So it makes it incredibly strong bonds. I mean, people have married that met here. People have divorced, came here. People have started businesses together.
Yeah, and tedious hand labor with another person is great grounds for deep conversation a lot of the time, which is maybe something that people don't quite think about with this kind of work. Is you're on the other side of a row harvesting green beans with someone. Man, oh man, can you get into a chat and dive deep just through that process.
My favorite part, Richard and Chris, when I was, because I'm not running FQT Farm anymore. I haven't been for the last 2 seasons. My favorite part of that journey, that was 7 years, was being in the trenches with the team. Like hardcore days, hardcore week, like going through the ups and downs, the traumas, not pushing people, but the farm in itself was pushing everyone in one direction, and just being present in those times. It was just like, man, you really get to know people. And I love that part of being just like I don't want to say the older brother, but kind of like the person that's been through it a lot. Like, I know what July is and what August is, and I've been through these, cycles so many times that I'm comfortable in them now, and passing down that kind of learning of, it's uncomfortable, but it'll change. It's okay. Just stick to it. Don't think about it too much. We don't need to talk about this for millions of years. Let's just do the work. And anyway, that kind of reminds me of, farming is pretty crazy, but it just brings people together. It's so unique. So unique.
Definitely. I think there's something very healthy about just getting lost in using your body and moving, and that's what we're evolved to do. I think so many people, there's definitely when I see people that have sort of come from the city who are dreaming of this life, that come to trainings, for example, it's very clear who's gonna have to struggle to make it and who's got it in them. Most people are not used to moving their bodies at all nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And just functional strength and endurance it's really missing for a lot of people. So I like to get people to test themselves. Like, I'm a stickler for time and motion studies, and some of my favorite times on the farm are jobs that aren't particularly fun, like slaughtering chickens. It's not fun to do that. But what is really fun is that we've designed that setup in a way that it's like a wash pack station. It's just a workflow.
Mm-hmm.
And when everyone is performing, so first it takes people time to just learn their one little role. And then when they master that, then they start to learn to look both sides of them, to be able to balance their work with the people either side. And then when everyone is just performing, that's my favorite moment. It's like you're doing this incredible job and you could not do it faster or better. And it's like, I love those moments, and I love trying to lift the team in those sort of jobs so that they get the lived experience of, I know I can do this. And that's what gives them the confidence to go away and start their own business. If this is what's involved in raising pasture poultry, and if you can do it 80% as fast, then you can design your business to do 80% of that, and you can do that, and you're not left guessing. It leaves people with a really empowered confidence of, like, I know I can handle this.
Richard, the best place that you will find these flows is in the kitchen of a restaurant.
I hope I don't find myself in the kitchen of the restaurant.
You wanna poke the?
I was about to say, we've teased your farm and that side of you, and we're gonna return to it because I think we're gonna geek out. Why not, right? I think we're all nerds for that here, and so are the listeners. But let's come back to the present and the restaurant. And could you give us the origin story of this restaurant, especially in those terms that we mentioned in the beginning, which is that I think you're viewing it a bit as a way to get a louder voice in trying to change food and how people eat and see farming and all that. So yeah, could you give us the origin story of your restaurant and tell us the name?
Sure. Well, it's called Sillegarden, which means herring farm. Seal is herring in Swedish, and Sweden, anyone that's been to Sweden will have possibly tried or heard of this heavily fermented herring that you open a can of it and it explodes a bit, and some people love it and it makes a lot of people want to retch and be sick.
Sounds
It's like-
delicious.
It's full of proteins.
it tastes fantastic. It
Yeah.
smells disgusting.
Yeah.
Which is, many traditional fermented foods are kind of like that, I guess. But it means herring farm. It's got a long history. But I'll just go back a step because part of my intention is to create a platform and voice for wider, chefs and other people connected to food. That's part of it. But part of it is also to create cultural experiences because we live really in the middle of nowhere. And having grown up in the UK, the culture is very different. We're about 25 times less populated here. So there isn't really much going on. And I was thinking, like, my daughter's at the age where she's 14, turning 15. She's going to be leaving to high school and leaving home. It's the same age I left home. And I can remember that burning feeling of like just wanting to get out of it, And sorry, I'm just turning this. I thought I had turned this off. So she's about to leave home, and I was just reflecting on like what would I need to stay living in the countryside? Like what would inspire me if I was her age? And so, and it's for my own sake too. It's like wanting more cultural meetings in a way that most people now, if you wanted to go to a concert, you would have to go all the way to Stockholm or to Oslo. It's several hours travel, and people here are quite used to, like, someone living around where we live would happily drive for an hour to go to a restaurant because there are no restaurants within that distance. So yeah, it's not just about wanting to have a platform. I'm actually wanting to sort of hide in the background a bit more, because a lot of people maybe think of me extrovertedly because of my media presence or whatever. But actually, I'm mostly introverted, and I like to be out in the field doing work and thinking and not necessarily talking. I can do well as an extrovert on stage if I have to talk, but I prefer and spend most of my time actually quietly tucked away. And my whole thing with this restaurant is to be in the background. Like, I just grow the food that I already do anyway, and the chef can maybe take center stage. So that's I just wanted to clarify that, because I'm as I get older, I'm trying to hide a bit more, I guess. Jam, you probably maybe have that feeling.
It's because I have a feeling like I'm meeting my, what's the word of like the same person?
Yeah, you're like doppelgangers, but not visually, more through what your life path is. Yeah. It's so parallel.
Like I'm the same. Like I can be a really good speaker and I could tell a good, story, but I like to be by myself as much as I can.
Maybe we can come back to this, because I think this topic of phases is something we could share some experience on, certainly for younger viewers, because I see this cycle every year and see little trends appearing in it. So that'll be interesting to revisit.
Yeah, and the restaurant, because I'm a little bit ahead of you, because that's when we opened the old mill here. That was exactly that. It wasn't to create more voices. It was just to create a space, a cultural space where people come together. Well, I was really geeking out, Chris, and you know this, about winter farming and growing year round. And so built a greenhouse here, and then people then come and they visit the winter greenhouse. They see these greens that are growing, and then we're serving them inside the restaurant, and we have a whole team dedicated to that. So it's really amazing. And it does serve the purpose of creating that internal DNA link. Like, people come here and they eat locally and they have a good time, and it's ingrained into the experience. And so I totally get your vision, and I do feel that that's a great way to connect people to farming through the restaurant experience. And then
through celebration.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Instead of just kind of guffing it through their throat. Like, here, everything's local, but we don't we don't obsess over that. It's just like good food, good experience, good people, good wine. And then we can go there or not, Richard. It's your call. But what I've found is that it's a great way to create that connection, but it's an expensive way to do it.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about the restaurant before I worry about the future of the economy. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about it because it's a very special place and it's got a relatively long history. It was set up about 120 years ago by a famous artist. And this is interesting, it was actually a bathhouse. And people would come from all over Sweden to bathe there because the water was renowned for its health-giving properties, but it was actually radioactive, which at the time was considered really healthy. So that's interesting. But what's nice about the restaurant is the family had some prominent artists within it. And it's really old, beautiful Nordic style buildings. It's got a dance hall. It's got a restaurant with 6-meter high ceilings, like 20 feet ceilings, painted and muraled all over by the original artists 100 years ago. And all of the tables and chairs were made by their family and are painted 100 years ago. So it's steeped in history. It's not a listed building, like a protected building, but it's protected by people in that it means a lot to a lot of people. So we have to be very careful what we do. But I remember when we started the farm, we would go up there and have fika, which is like Swedish coffee break. You have different types of pastries and cakes and coffee and what's called fika here. So we would go there sometimes and just eat because we were putting up fences and, you know, working so hard. And maybe we put them out of business because in those days it was coffee and cake for a set price and you could cut your own bit of cake. So we would just come up there and
a hungry crew of growers coming in to eat free cake.
So
maybe mud on the floor.
Their downfall. But then it's sad. Well, 8-9 years ago, they asked us if we wanted to do something with the place because the family still own it after all those generations, but they have another place the same that's even more fancy further away, and they focus on running that. So they asked if we wanted to do something, and we were too busy with the farm at that time. And then a lady from Stockholm ran it for a couple of years, and then it sat empty for a couple of years. So I actually approached them a couple of years ago and spoke to them about it. And then I was considering a very different life change. I was going to move towards Stockholm because of these cultural things that are missing here. And that my kids are old enough to move now. And then I revisited the idea of the property again and heard from the family that they'd only had one potentially interested person that was a German guy that wanted to smash it all down, build a load of houses and just flog them on. And they were like, definitely not. So it was like no one was going to buy it. So I put in a bid for half the asking price and they accepted. So then I was like, okay, then we're doing it. And I didn't really have the money to do it. I had to borrow substantially. I had to borrow quite substantially off a very kind intern who had spare cash to put a deposit on it. And then I've had to borrow heavily from the bank to fund it. I mean, technically, I can't afford to run this restaurant, but I love the place. It's got so much potential, and it's a very special place. It's got, I don't know if you've seen photos, but it's in my village, but it's about 7 kilometers from the farm here. But it is a farm itself, and historically it was always farmed, and that food would go to the restaurant. And it's on the lake called Fryken, which is a very big, very deep lake that has salmon and trout and the burbot, which is like a freshwater cod species. Don't know if you get them over there. But it's very unusual. Sweden's full of lakes. We have over 300,000 lakes, but they're mostly shallow lakes and you don't get very interesting fish. But the big lakes and the deep lakes are very interesting. And this is a very, very long, deep lake that it's sloping south down to that lake. And what's nice is that we're kind of bringing back the place to life, paying respect to its history by bringing the farm back there too. So we're actually moving half of our farm over there so that people can dine immersed in that setting. And originally, I think the restaurant, they used to serve the fish from the restaurant and I think animals from the land, but I can't find any written record of that.
If
But
people
that's
want
the aim, is to
if people want to see it, what do they Google to see the farm, to see the restaurant?
it's a silly restaurant, Sillegarden. But if they find my Instagram, they can find it through that.
Your
We
YouTube
just
videos, you
started
did
building an Instagram for it.
and you did a nice tour of it on YouTube. I saw that.
Yes,
and that
I might
gave
have done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a little tour when we were just finalizing the papers.
JM, do
Yeah.
you care to speak a bit to the parallels of, 7 kilometers from your home?
Yeah.
Same thing here. A historic building that is very precious to the community. It's the same thing here. Keeping that history and respecting the people that have a connection to it from the past. So it's not just, obliterated to nothing recognizable. All these things are happening here too. I think you should tell.
Yeah, the old
about
mill
that.
is 1849. So it's an old building and we have all the exposed beams here where we're sitting. And it's the same thing, Richard. Like this is 7 minutes from my home farm, and this is like one of the last English-speaking town in the province of Quebec. So Stanbridge East, it's by the river, and it had, for I don't know what reason, it had like 2 acres of open field in the back of the inn. Like 2 acres in the middle of a town by the river is a lot of grass to cut for nothing. And for all these years, I was cycling here and I was looking at these fields and I'm like, my God, this could be a really nice farm to table restaurant. And going every year, passing through it, and I'm like, oh my God. And then eventually it was for sale for 3, 4, 5 years. It just wasn't picking up. Nobody wanted to open a restaurant in the middle of nowhere. And, just like you did, I had the calling for it. I just saw the need to create culture around food and around a place of history. It's a beautiful place here. And I took my heart to it. And now you're doing the same. And, I think that's really what, the easy way is not the better way. And so if the heart is calling, that's where you need to go.
I think you have the same entrepreneurial disease that I have.
Yeah, I think I don't have it anymore. I talked to you last time about that. That's like, I think there's a point in time where you're like, okay, this took a lot out of me, but I'm proud of what we've accomplished. We'll be in the Michelin Guide. It's gonna be news in the next 2 weeks, and so that's like something that I would have never thought that would be even possible. But I like what you're saying, and I understand this place of heritage, of beauty, of land, because the restaurant you're talking about seems to be like in a very, very precious place, and to bring people there around local food, around farming. This is really what the future of cooking is, and all the chefs that are not doing that. Like, in my opinion, they're totally not into what's next. Like, this is what's next.
Yeah, and I think this is in vogue in some ways, but it's like by whatever metric you stack it up by, it's always going to be viable to do things locally and seasonally. Like, it makes sense, whatever's going on globally. And I think that there's something nice around bringing back this old special place with, like, we're using modern approaches and modern sort of tools, but still doing something that's deemed quite old school. It's not big tractors on 1,000-hectare fields. It would be deemed quite old-fashioned in some ways, but it's like we're bringing a new face to that, I think. And I think what speaks the most to people from my experience running this farm here is just to see people working land with care and attention. It moves people here because it's not that far out of the generational memory. Like here we have a very traditional way of cutting hay. It's very labor intensive. I wouldn't ever consider doing it, economically it makes no sense, but it's when they cut the Norwegian spruce, which is what 90% of all trees in Sweden are. It's not really forests that people talk about, the Swedish forest. It's monocultural spruce plantations. But they take the very tops of the trees and they put them in the ground, and then they put bars across, and they cut the grass with a scythe and lay it over the racks. And it's a way of making hay even when it's raining. And all the kids would have come and slept under the bottom one in the summer, and you can imagine all of the community would come together and put long tables in the field and eat together, and massive load of work to prep for the winter. And we did that it was either the first or second year of running the farm. We did that because everyone still had the old poles from 30-40 years ago. It only left the community about 30 years ago, which is not very long ago, considering how most farming has changed in Europe. And people were walking up to come and have a look at what we're doing because it was like, my father did that, or my grandfather did that. And it really touched people. And I think that's been my experience when people come to the farm and see us tending the vegetable garden or tending the animals. It's a very visually and aromatically pleasing farm. So it touches people, and they immediately know, this is a lot of work and care going on here. And I think if we touch these old special places with that, and we keep and preserve those places, you can't help to move people. And that place has got that feeling. It's like anyone that goes there, it's like, this place is so special. It's I don't know what it is in the pattern language. I don't know if you remember Christopher Alexander, their old books about pattern language in architecture, but some buildings just have that feeling. I guess Feng Shui speaks to that too, but it's got a whole load of that. You walk into that place and it's magic, and it touches people. And I think what better way to celebrate that than bringing the best quality food and events? I mean, that is got to be the future, I think.
Let's talk more about that cultural element of creating culture where you live, because that's something that we're both mega passionate about and talk about constantly on this podcast. Because where we live, there's a really strong culture around local farming. There's tons of local farms, and there's quite a few. I mean, I guess I could say tons of small businesses that have popped up in just the last 5-10 years, all in kind of circling that small farm sphere. And then I think I've heard you say before, you want farmers to be the center of communities again. And what you just said about the old fashioned method of making hay, and I read a lot of old literature about farming, and so much of the way of life of the past was communal farming. It was people coming together around the harvest because everyone depended on each other for it. And I think to create a space where things like that can live on amongst the modern context is so important on many levels, both preserving heritage, but also just, again, having a cultural place that puts farmers at the center. Maybe the two of you can speak a bit to that, because it seems like that's probably the fundamental driving force of your project. And can you tell me?
One thing I would say, I mean, like something that struck me for the last 15 years is like farming used to be the most noble profession on earth, and it's now got the highest suicide rate of any profession. And I've always thought, like, okay, how to put nobility back into rural stewardship? How do I get some kid from Stockholm to think it's cool to come out here in the middle of nowhere and do this and work really hard? And the only way I felt originally when we were setting the farm up, it's like, this has got to be an economic transaction. It's like I gotta show you I can earn what you earn in Stockholm, sitting in some office all day, for being out planting trees and communicating with animals and growing beautiful vegetables. And like, if I can show you I make the same as you for doing this and being totally in command of my time and having all the wonderful perks of all my food supply right outside my door and make it fun and communal based, then that's what's going to speak to those young people particularly, because it's quite a hard sell. I mean, especially in Sweden, like the benefits here, the social system is such that you get quite well paid for not doing anything. So it's quite a hard sell for Swedes. But the first few years, there weren't many Swedes coming here because everything we were doing was quite new. I think Sweden's maybe, I used to say it's like 20 years behind. Like when I arrived here, there were no CSAs, whereas in the UK, they've been going like decades, So it's a little slow energy, but that's changed a lot. But now I think my feelings evolved more to what you were just saying, Chris, around actually like people are starved for connection and rootedness to a place. And I think especially since COVID, although that's probably been a bit different here because like COVID didn't affect Sweden that much because people are kind of self-isolating anyway in Sweden. Like it didn't actually change a lot. It just made all our businesses go a lot better because people were interested in local food a lot more. But that's the bit I'm more yearning for, is like, and I see that in the younger people I'm mentoring. It's like they're rejecting some of the things that I was brought up in, and they want that meaning, and they want to be physically fit, and they want to be in shape, and they have quite different values from when I was growing up in the sort of alternative world, I guess. And so yeah, I think meaning and connection and rootedness to place is something that people are really longing for, and I think that's also happens to be the future that I can see for food businesses. It's like connection to place. It's like food tourism is going to be all about that in the future, I think. So it's kind of also connected to that topic. And I don't know what your thoughts are, Jam, around that.
What, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I was going to say do you feel like everything you're saying makes me think a lot of it's that we've hit a critical mass of homogenization in not only culture, but also just a critical mass of virtual lifestyle via social media, where I'm pretty sure I've heard recently that the youngest generations are hyper aware of social media being really bad for them in general. Whereas like 10 years ago, I think a lot of young people would have resisted that idea and be like, don't tell me it's bad, it's fine. And then now more young people are like, oh yeah, I'm getting away from it. The same way I've heard young people are apparently not drinking alcohol as much as they want to, because it's kind of in vogue to avoid it for health, which is just really interesting. So yeah, would you see that it's like because we've hit this point of so much homogenization of culture, people are just feeling deep down this starvation for actual relation to place, because their entire day is on that screen being connected to the rest of the world, and they start to feel a bit of I don't know what the feeling is, like a existential crisis maybe, that
you're so connected yet so disconnected.
Yeah,
connection to place, but also connection to each other. It's like people live their whole lives often not communicating with the people right around them, and I think when we set up little learning experiences or cultural experiences, it's people are hungry for that. I think, like starved for it, I think.
I can tell, to answer your question, Chris, I can tell you that the restaurant is doing that. People come here and they know that it was a nice story. That's why they're here. They hear the story and they come. Once they're here, though, wow, they are having a moment, and they're living through something. And it's never going to be like when we're on the farm and doing a staff meal and hanging out together. That's the ultimate, but it's kind of like a little peek into it. And I do feel that creating a space where people come and hang out, celebrating something, It's just very powerful. And we have a few of these around here in Stanbridge. We talk, about the restaurant here, but in Fredericksburg, we have La Bite Betrave. We have Wednesday night farmer night. That's really epic. And by the way, Chris, now we're showing the hockey games. It's the hockey playoff, and our team is in the playoff. So
You're showing them here at the Old Mill?
no, at the Bite Betrave.
Oh, yes. Good.
So
Wednesday. Tomorrow is Farmer Wednesday, and there's a game. Game
hockey
2.
is a great way to connect.
But that's, I think, the authentic experiences, and you can't really get more authentic in terms of restaurant than being right in the middle of the farm, or being very much connected to a farm directly. And
Were you inspired by Magnus? I forget his last name. The guy in Sweden, the chef, famous chef.
Magnus Nielsen,
Magnus Nielsen. He had everyone coming down middle of nowhere. Was it more nowhere than
up to the middle of nowhere?
So was he further out than you are?
Much further north.
Much further, and people would come and rave.
I'm level with Stockholm here, so I'm still in the populated part of the country.
Yeah,
but he's very lovely guy, and very I would say he's one of these mega famous chefs who's genuinely interested in production. There's a lot of famous chefs who are kind of into it, but they don't really explore it on any deeper level, and I think he really does. He's very engaged with farming. He actually bought a farm now and has moved further south to set up a B&B, I believe, doing more normal food. He's trying to get away from the fancier he wants to do.
He's doing the reverse of you. He's buying a farm.
But it's a common thing. I think it's so common to see chefs who transition over to be growers. And to see farmers starting to want to be more in touch with the actual food bit of it. I think I've seen that a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. I think.
Yeah, Matty Madison, similar. He had the farm or connection with the farm.
Do you know Eric Schultz from Steadfast Farm in Arizona?
Yeah, I don't know him well, but I know exactly who you mean.
He's a good friend of mine. He just opened a restaurant also.
Really?
Yeah. So
something's in the air.
Something's in the air.
Yeah. That's good. Could you, back to that idea of getting young people to see farming as an option for them and think, oh, that's cool. I want that, especially beyond, it's one thing to have the romantic idea, but to people of a certain age, even that often isn't quite there for them. And like you said, maybe it's economic. Could you give us an example sales pitch to that young person to say, hey, farming is an option for you?
I don't know if I could give you a sales pitch.
Or just a pitch to them to why it could be an option. I'm just wondering what that would sound like.
It's a story I would weave to them over the season, Yeah, it's a long, slow, because that's got to be quite precisely dosed to their context, I think.
Yeah.
But I guess, for me, what's enthralling about it is I get to... Joel Salatin's words are really echoing in my mind of we get to conduct a symphony on this pasture. So I'm mostly farming things other than vegetables. We farm a lot of vegetables, but we farm a lot of animals, and they make up a bigger part of the farm finances. But I get to walk out my back door, and it's we're always busy, and farmers are busier than most other people, but I still get to direct my time, even if I'm busy. And I get to see the direct consequence of my actions every day. I get to eat food better than any restaurant could supply. I have food meters, not food miles. We have beef, pork, vegetables, everything I eat. I don't eat many carbs, so I have my entire diet stored in the freezers and fridges and fields right outside my back door. So I take it for granted. When we typically go out to eat, we're like, that was better at home.
Oh, yeah.
It's
always the same.
Go out.
That reminds me of a story I shared once on the podcast of at this point in my life, unless the restaurant is one in which I have some connection to the owners in some way, or someone I'm with is connected to them, I'm just kind of at a loss for it. It could be great tasting, but I just don't really care. I'm like, a meal is all right. This happens when I've been to a restaurant in Montreal and other people are saying, oh, it's amazing. And I'm just like, eh. But then I come home and I go to the restaurant of my friend and they're serving farm food from my friends.
That's epic.
And I just, it fills the full body, not just
And we're quite particular, like, we're going off of what your question was, but like one thing, we have a rule at our farm, like I've explored a lot around dietary things, and I don't want to get too into that now, but like one thing we definitely ban from our farm is like seed oils, like absolutely not allowed on this farm, won't be allowed in our restaurant. And it's like little things like that you can't really trust most restaurants nowadays. They're doing everything to cut corners, and it's like, I do not want to eat seed oil ever. I don't want it. And I know that we're not gonna cut those kind of corners, like, because we don't need to. And there's a value system that's, I think, bigger businesses often they have to lose that because they can't make it work. It's like, that's where the passion piece comes in, I guess. But just to round up your question, I think it's about making a decent living, working with your skills and learning a lot of skills. I feel like I learn more than any university could ever teach. It's like I have to be a physicist, a chemist, a biologist, an electrician, a plumber, an accountant, a marketer, everything. I don't have to be expert at anything. I have to be competent at a lot of stuff. And I love that. And that's something I was brought up in school as a perfectionist. And perfectionism is the death of creativity. You cannot be creative if you're a perfectionist. And I spent a lot of my early adulthood smashing that out of my brain. And that's what I think we need, is loads more competent generalists. And I really value that. And my creative process is met entirely in this lifestyle. I'm designing things and building weird structures for holding chickens, or I've just built a stage at the restaurant and out of round timbers, and nice. I'm building saunas and converting barns, and it's totally stimulating creatively. And so I can't think of a life where you learn more and are in control of all of your inputs and outputs for life. It's like we have our fuel, we have our firewood, we have our food. We can basically manage our needs, and that feels you feel very secure when you have your food supply in your control,
Richard,
and we also got hundreds of other people's food supply secured.
You just talked about not going there, and if you say JM, I'd rather not talk about that. But does your channel talk about some of the changes that you've made in your, I think, diet or your personal health over the last few years?
Sometimes
you talked a little bit because I do feel that we had some folks on the podcast here give us one very wise quote at one point. It's like, farmers, they exploit themselves, and I think that's very true. We're so hard on ourselves, and I do feel also in the community there's a big need to hear about leaders like us and others that have gone through hard times and struggles. And I've come to realize that it people want to hear that because it makes the connection between those that have sometimes the mics and some that don't, but we all go through hardships. And so I don't know. I don't know if that's a place where you want to go or not, but...
What specifically?
But I think I've heard you talked about changing your diet. This podcast is proudly supported by Tessier Greenhouses. Tessier has always been one of my top choices for greenhouses and tunnels. For over 45 years, they've been manufacturing high quality and incredibly strong structures right here in North America. Their products can withstand the heavy snow loads we faced here in the Northeast, and their prices are among the best in the market. Tessier offers excellent service and expertise, always ready to help with customized solutions. I particularly appreciate their commitment to innovation and their willingness to listen to the needs of growers. At the old mill, we use several of their Gothic caterpillar tunnels and micro tunnel for season extension, and I'm always impressed with their design and build quality. Without companies like Tessier, food sovereignty just wouldn't be possible. So thank you, Tessier, for helping us growers feed our community year-round. You guys rock.
Use promo code MGI10 for 10% off your first order and free shipping in select regions.
Yeah, I can say a little about that. I mean, I've always studied anthropology. I used to sit in on my friends' university lectures and just sit on courses that I found interesting. I never went to a bricks and mortar university. I went to Gaia University and did a master's in eco-social design and communication, whatever that means. But I used to sit through different friends and partners' studies just out of interest, and I've always read very widely in anthropology, and I'm interested in how we function best mentally, physically. And I've also noticed, I used to be a high competing athlete, but that was a long time ago. And I noticed that I eat very little compared to people. I see that I am very comfy running on much less calorie intake. I've spent a lot of time fasting in the past. And I've also tried out different diets for at least 3 to 6 months so that I really understand what's going on in me. And I've thought about this like from my own body and experience inside of myself, but also anthropologically, because one thing I've got an issue with is the amount of grain consumption that makes up most of the world's food supply. We definitely never used to eat that much grain. Not in a longer term perspective, I'm talking. And I think our knowledge of history of farming is skewed by our misunderstandings of archaeology and those fields. So far we think farming is 11,000 years old based on the oldest granaries found in Draa in southern Jordan. But I would bet my farm that farming is many times older than that. That's a whole nother topic. But what's interesting is that nearly all the vegetables we eat today didn't exist 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. So we obviously didn't evolve eating them. So what did we evolve eating? Well, if we look at hunter-gatherer tribes that still live in the carrying capacity of the land today, they don't come back to the village to celebrate finding a avocado. They celebrate when they shoot the wild pig, right? It's fat and calories. And so I've explored a lot with a very animal-focused diet where you take a lot of your nutrient and calories from fat. And so I eat mainly animal fat, meat, some eggs, some cheese, some vegetables. And I try and avoid grains. I notice that I eat way more vegetables if I'm growing them. Like if I am walking out in my garden, I'll eat just nyam, 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 like this. If someone's like prepared a salad, I'm not so interested. Like if I walk in the supermarket, the vegetables in the supermarket they don't vibrate at me like attractive food. In my garden, I eat loads more. And I prefer eating like that than I do a prepared salad. But I am a little strange, and that's fine. But it's just interesting because, there's a whole piece around plants, like, phytonutrients and toxins in plants that you don't, like simple things like 98% of animal species are edible. 98% of plants are poisonous. That's interesting. So I don't know. This will be controversial, I'm sure, to some of your listeners, and that's fine. I'm everyone's got to go on their own journey with that. But I feel best, and I eat least if I eat animal based and avoid. And actually, I think we wrote a farm cookbook about how to eat the sort of whole farm diet, as well as preserving and foraging for wild foods, which we do a lot of. We have amazing mushrooms, berries, things here. And I've always fished and hunted. And I think easier to think about with diet is rather than like what to eat specifically, because I will flex that according to different things at different times of the year. It's easier to think about what not to eat. And that's like seed oil, sugar, and grains that haven't been fermented. It's like if you cut those things out, you cut 60% of all cause mortality out straight away. And that's almost undisputed. It's like the correlation between seed oil, especially over in America, and all cause mortality is like an absolute correlation. And, I think especially the younger generation are like becoming more and more aware of these things much quicker. And yeah. So that's a bit where I'm at with that. I'm lucky I have, tons of meat in the freezer at any time, and I have all the vegetables I could ever need. I've got all the wild foods. We have, you were talking about the superfood industry with the health and fitness industry. I remember on the radio the other year, they were like, there's 50, I think it was 50 million tons of Swedish blueberries that wouldn't get collected in the forests this year. And they were trying to encourage people to go out and pick blueberries because we have we have nearly 19 hours of daylight in the summer. So the riboflavins in the berries are extremely high in the Nordic countries. That's why a lot of pharmaceutical herbs are grown at this latitude. And yes, we have all these superfoods around us. So I'm really interested to broaden this topic. Maybe is I'm super interested in nutrient density, and I think we need to eat far less if we eat nutrient dense things. And I also notice from my own experience that our hunger mechanism is triggered by fat, not by carbs. That's why when you watch people eating pasta or pizzas or whatever, they don't get triggered to stop eating. That's why people that eat loads of carbs are usually overweight, right? Whereas if you eat animal fats as your primary metabolizing calories, like think about bacon. Take a load of bacon and just eat bacon, and at some point you're not hungry anymore, and no. you know you're not hungry.
Yeah,
that's your body saying, I'm done. I've got enough nutrients. Carbs don't do that. Vegetables don't do that. That's, our body has a mechanism with animal fats to do that. And we've lost that in a couple of generations. Over in your part of the world, everyone cooked with beef tallow and animal shortenings, lard, whatever. Not long ago. Like our grandparents would have only cooked like that. And yeah, I really like wanting to press that in, like something we've always done on the farm is like taught our customers too, like anatomically appropriate eating. It's like if you want to eat beef, like 7 out of 10 meals is mince, and 2 is stews, and 1 is fine cuts. It's like in Sweden, most people think a cow is made of fillet. It's like, no, it's a tiny bit of fillet. It's like 2% fillet. and likewise, things like animal fats, it's like so unusual you can't just go and buy lard to cook in very easily anymore, but you can buy 50 types of sunflower oil. And it's like, that was developed for industrial machine lubrication, not for food. And I really want to push those things because I just see that, like, of all the things that affect health and well-being, diet's a pretty big one. And if we're going to farm this beautiful food, we should be looking at that whole package as well as educating customers around it too.
Chris, do you feel that that's controversial or not at all?
I mean, depending on who you're talking to, of course, there's the more vegan-minded side of the equation who definitely are going to think rather opposite, I suppose. But I know it's quite popular right now, the idea of more animal-based eating, and a lot of people are thinking in that direction. I don't know.
Nourishing Tradition was a book that I read many years ago. Sally Fallon, let's say. It's been a long time, and she talks about these things and about fats and good fats. And, I don't think it's a question of believing. It's a question of trying. And, I myself, I've started to fast more in the last few years, and I see the benefit of that. And I certainly am, really on par with the idea of eliminating grains as much as possible from diet. My only problem is I like beer. And that's kind of like, that's the one. But and
that's the thing too. It's like, if we really want to go sustainable with these things, it's like we should be drinking wines and or ciders, things from perennial crops, right?
Yeah.
Like, think how much soil degradation goes into monocultural beer production. It's like,
it's incredible. For me, it's the social aspect of going together and having a beer. That's the part that I like. I like connecting with others, and then, sometimes the beer is just like it's an excuse to just hang out. But besides that, like, for the record, I think I'm on board with pretty much everything that you've said. I do believe the same thing, so I think it's not so controversial.
I think it's interesting, just the stillness in the body that comes from not spending all your time digesting. It's like, I have this experience so often in my life of being full of emptiness. And I watch, like, the people that come to the farm, I eat such a little amount compared to some of the young boisterous guys, and they eat a massive lunch, and then they want to sleep after lunch and they can't keep up. And I've always eaten a little, and I'm slim and nimble, and I can just keep working hard. And it's like, power comes from nutrient density, that's for sure, and from fats for me. And it's in line with, historically, anthropologically, it makes sense to me,
Chris, I don't want to hijack our moment with Richard, but there was one question that could be controversial that I wanted to ask you. And we've had on our podcast twice now. The listeners probably, I'm not sure if they would have heard the second time that Dave Chapman from the Real Organic Project came to the podcast. And both times that Dave was here, he's a great guy. He's a organic farming pioneer. And, he's very concerned about the word regenerative and how a lot of the influence that's pushing it is funded by, Cargill, Monsanto, Nestle, all these big brands that are turning to regenerative, and it's very loosely defined. It's never regenerative organic. And when he comes and he talks to us about this, Richard, it feels like, we're playing into this trap where we're promoting something that, higher forces are, they're laughing their way to the bank because we're puppeteers in that way. And obviously Ridgedale Farm is not that. You guys are really regenerating an area, but can you respond to that? How do you feel about this? Is this off, right? Tell me.
Well, it brings up different things, but I wrote a book called Regenerative Agriculture, and I got to define what that means to me. And I think within our alternative agricultural space, that means very different things to different people. But I think the one baseline principle that I think must be founded on, it's like, it must be soil building, it must be carbon sequestration, it must be leaving the soil better condition than it was when you found it, right? So, if you talk to holistic management graziers, the answer is cows. And it's like, well, no, we're not all cow farmers. It's like, but I think you struggle to there's a whole trend now of regenerative gardening, and it's like, I think gardening is actually, I don't know if you could call it regenerative. Like, really, it's the most input intensive of any farm enterprise. The most sustainable thing you can do on a farm is turn sunlight to grass to flesh. There is no more sustainable thing than that. And yet we live, I've spent a lot of years pushing back on meat production bad, vegetable production good, the sort of memes that fly by on Facebook groups in the past. And it's like, yeah, that's true of modern industrial farming, but it's 180-degree incorrect of real farming. It's like producing beef from pasture is the most sustainable thing you can do, period. And vegetable production turns out to be, European vegetable production is based on industrial German broiler manure, loads of oil, loads of plastic, and loads of slave labor, essentially. So it's like super input intensive. So I would say it's questionable if vegetable production could actually be called regenerative. That's, I could debate it very strongly either way, I think.
But do you feel that we could be manipulated about that word and, used by...
No, I think the big ag has hijacked those words. But I think, I don't know if I'm that interested in, I guess a new term will come up at some point. I remember this at Groundswell, where I did the keynote a couple of years ago, and they've invited Monsanto, Syngenta into that festival because they specifically didn't want to be, an obscure clique. They wanted to involve everyone. And I understand that, and I think it makes sense because alternative ag is still so very niche, and it's easy to sort of pigeonhole yourself and make yourself insignificant. So I appreciate that thinking, but I'm there giving a talk about how we can make a good living doing things very well. And the next talk is about minimizing glyphosate's exposure and and that's that's not part of regenerating anything as far as I'm concerned. So I think it's a problem, and I think I've never been part of any movements because of movement's sake, as I do not appreciate movements. I'm interested in farm design. I like systems design, and I'm good at chatting about it sometimes, but I'm not interested in being part of a movement. But I'm guessing the Regen Ag movement will turn into something else at some point too. There's all these buzzwords, but I don't know. It sort of ties back to something that you touched on earlier that maybe we can come back to about. I guess it's part of getting older, but it just made me think about how there's this, if you look through social media, there's this constant drive to innovate, and I sort of started sitting back more in life feeling we don't need more solutions. It's like we already have solutions. Of course, little tweaks of tools improve them and but it's like we already have all these things in place. I've become much less interested in following these buzz trends, and and I can see it. I'm not so interested in whether big ag is taking over that term. It doesn't take up much of my headspace. I'm not sure I'm interested in that. It's like I'm not sure I'm interested in the next fancy upgrade to a caterpillar tunnel. I've lost my interest in staying on the edge of all the new things that come, because it's like we know how to grow vegetables. It's not rocket science to grow vegetables. It's not rocket science to raise beef. It's like just get on with it and let's eat nice food. And I guess I'm just getting old and grumpy farmer stage now.
I like it.
Let's switch to the nerd out phase of farming. I think we're there. Can you tell us a bit about why anyone should care about PA Yeoman's work?
Yes. I would say my work's been heavily influenced by different ecological design thinkers. And that spans from, various different people over the last 70 years, but one of the biggest influences on my work has been P.A. Yeomans' keyline design. And what P.A. Yeomans came up with 70 years ago was he was in dryland Australia and had watched the Chinese miners masterfully manage water on gravity through the sluicing of all of the mining rock. So he developed systems, low-tech systems using earthen resources found on farms to work with gravity to allow them to, let's say, go off-grid with water. So gravity-fed and irrigated farm systems. He also developed a pattern of cultivating the land that makes water do something very unusual and opposite to what it would normally do in a topography. And he could create farm patternings on topographic maps that you can't really do on the landscape very easily. You need to do that on a map to understand. And he also developed what we call a scale of permanence, an ordering framework for how to design farm properties based on how permanent a feature is. I've done a lot of work with property designs from, a couple to hundreds of hectares in different climatic zones. And that one piece has helped order and my understanding of how to approach land-based design more than anything else. So I guess I like to synthesize the work of P.A. Yeomans together with holistic management, which we use for decision making and context setting. That's an extremely potent foundation, and that's how we begin all of our educational programs or consultancies, is getting very clear about what we're actually trying to do. But Yeomans developed that scale of permanence. It was the first integrated holistic land planning system, and yet very few people fully understand it today. And it's also been applied to city planning, urban planning, and most urban planners have not heard of that either. Like, he wrote a book in the 70s called The City Forest, designing cities within their watersheds that could harvest their own water and distribute it by gravity, that could clean their own waste within the city boundaries, growing coppice agroforestry that fueled the townhouses, and had their roads in the correct places in landscapes to passively collect and harvest water, with all the infrastructure laid alongside where it's easy to locate it rather than hack through the middles of fields like we do today. Just beautiful, sublime design. Like, I've never come across a more sublime design approach than Yeomans' scale of permanence. So we use that a lot in land planning, and not always. It's a lens through which to look at the prioritization of farm planning, and it's suited for larger landscape planning. Like, when you're, let's say, on the garden scale, so if we think of our intensive enterprises where you can make a living as a gardener on a half a acre or whatever, you get to kind of dictate the entire landscape. But when you're working with extensive enterprises on tens or hundreds or thousands of acres, you need to really read the landscape and understand how topography affects water movement in the land to be able to optimize that landscape for energy efficiency, for the climatic conditions you're in, etc. So it's a very important piece. It's a very big topic. It's someone's life's work that I highly recommend to anyone who is got a farm to plan. And by farm, I mean a larger landscape, not a vegetable farm is small enough that you don't need to get into all those subjects necessarily, because you get to dictate the landscape a bit more. So it's been massive for me.
Yeah. Can you tell us about the idea of how tool innovation made farming fun again for you? I thought that I've heard you say this before, and I thought that was interesting because maybe new people take for granted some of the tools, but it's when you think about how much small tool innovation has actually happened in just the last 20 years. I think it changed things a lot. And you've said that it basically just made vegetable farming fun again for you compared to your first experiences. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So I guess I came into veg growing more in small tractor, massive loads of plastic, using like woven plastic, 300-foot lengths, and having to drag them out with a tractor and plant 40,000 leeks before breakfast, and getting paid like $5 an hour, working like a dog for 12 hours a day. And so that was the point. I was like, this sucks. There must be a better way to make a living farming. And with livestock, that's often much easier. I mean, a big part of what I did with my book, Regenerative Agriculture, was trying to put together a way of, like, it's almost an impossible book to write, which is why no one's ever written a book like that. But it's a missing book in the literature, because I've had all these people coming on training say like, yeah, I'm inheriting the family farm. I got 200 acres. I think I'll be a market gardener. And it's like, no, that's not a responsible way to manage that. Most people will give an arm and a leg for that, and you're just going to use a tiny bit. What are you going to do with the rest of it? Or likewise, people would be like, yeah, I think I'd like to start a micro dairy, and they've got like a 2-acre back lot. And it's like, no, it's not going to work economically. Like, there's a critical mass to do all these things. So what I tried to do is a comparative analysis of all the sort of different enterprises that people consider, of like, okay, if you've got this much money and you got this much land and you need to earn this much, there's 3 things you could do. You can't do any of them. You can't do any of them. You can only do these 3. They're the only things that can really fit that time, place, and circumstance. And when I set up the farm, I remember I was looking at these old documents that I published, the design process of this farm before I even moved here. So I came to see the farm. It was under snow. And then I had to work abroad all winter, and bought the farm having only seen a topographic map and under 50 centimeters of snow. So I designed the farm, and I published, through the scale of permanence that we just talked about, I published about what we were going to do here over the next years. And we literally spent the first 4 or 5 years 3D printing it onto the ground. And it's interesting how, if I read those old documents now, the vegetable garden was only ever intended to be about 3 allotments, like a couple of hundred square meters, just to provide food for the people at the actual farm. And most of our commercial garden now is actually on what was the neighbor's land. And it was interesting because I think, particularly through your work, JM, which, I think you've done more for the small farming movement than pretty much anyone I can think of. And just the exposure to like some of the basic handhold tools that people like Elliot Coleman developed, it's like that makes it fun. And it's like, we have enough. We don't need lots more. It's like, you can spend a couple of $1,000 on a toolkit that makes it fun to grow vegetables again. And that's enough. It's like, so that led me to feel like, okay, we'll scale this up. And all we had to do was bring forward the design. We had designed a irrigation pond. Well, we designed a pond in the landscape, but had no plan to build that for many years, because it was just going to cost money, not generate any value other than sort of ecosystem value. But then we just cash flowed that in our cash flow plan so that we would be able to irrigate the gardens, and set up a garden a few years in. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And it's, yeah, I'd say primarily thanks to tools. That's the only reason I considered it again. It's like the advancement of those basic battery powered and hand tools. And anyone familiar with JM's work or my own work will know, the basic market garden toolkit. It's very cheap, very easily accessible, and it's very different to how I got involved in veg growing, which was still like just really wonky tools that
Yeah, the
aren't
tractor.
fit for the sort of commercial
The tractor around everything. It was always around
Yeah.
tractors.
Yeah, or just by hand, like really inefficiently.
Mhm.
And I guess the farmers were not paying me much, so they could afford for me to be pretty inefficient. And but yeah,
Can you tell us about REKO Rings?
I can.
You'll see.
So a REKO ring it's a play on words. In Finnish, it means circular. So the idea of circular economy. And what happened when we set up the farm, probably the best thing we ever did was spent a lot of time in the first year setting up customer emails and making contact with people. We did loads of farm open days. We had little flyers in the local sort of free ads paper, and suddenly like a few hundred people show up in this little sleepy village. And we did 5 open days that year, I think. And that's the basis of our customer list. And then we fed them, we like face paint the kids, we'll spray paint the cows to look like a zebra or whatever, and like just make it really fun and get everyone's email address. And it's like, hey, you've seen this. We've got the best eggs. You can't buy eggs like this in store, but you can only buy them at the car park on Thursday at 5 till 5:30. That's where we drop them off, and you can only buy them for 3 months at a time. So you can buy 1 tray, 2 trays, 3 trays a week, whatever you want, but you have to pay for 3 months now. So like a CSA essentially. So we set up the CSA for the vegetables in a sort of familiar way. We set up subscriptions for our eggs, and we set up pre-sales for meat chickens, which there were no, like, pasture poultry didn't exist in Sweden. There was 2 or 3 CSAs in the whole country when we moved here, and all this stuff was kind of new. So we set up essentially buying clubs inspired by people like Joel Salatin. Like when I set up this farm, the only person in farming literature who shared anything about finances and time and motion studies was Joel Salatin, and it was all really out of date and American, like pasture poultry profits, how to make $60,000 in 6 months off 20 acres. It's like, oh, we can make $100,000 off 2 acres in 4 months. It's like they were really out of date, but at least they gave some basis for like starting from, So we made these buying clubs, and what was really funny was with our meat chickens, we made a currency, a farm currency called a Ridgedale, and the original Swedish money was $1, and so Ridgedale, it made a nice play. And I got on 6 o'clock primetime national television talking about bringing down the agricultural system. We sold 1,000 chickens, and I hadn't even moved to the farm yet.
Nice.
And
I love
but
that.
I knew how to produce them, right? So this is important to sort of it's of course better to pre-sell things from a cash flow perspective, but you need to know you can deliver what you're promising, which I came from many years of farming experience, that I knew I could produce what I said I was going to. Otherwise you sort of, because we're farming customers at the same time, right? We're farming the type of customer we want, and we're using a bit of a leverage principle, because there's always, this 80-20 idea. There's always a percentage of Mrs. Jones who just want to tell you about their cat and how it got run over last week, and they want to talk for 45 minutes but only buy 6 eggs. It's like, I don't have time to hear about your cat. I don't care about your cat. Just want to sell you 30 eggs and then get out of here. And that intimate connection with customers that's all it takes, is a bit of eye contact and like, hey, how was your holiday? You look nice in your suntan. See you next week. That's enough. Intimacy doesn't need more than that. It doesn't, I can't hear about your cat unless you hold the annual like cat get together weekends and you've got 200 cat lady friends who are going to buy my eggs too, then I'll give you 5 minutes. But there's always a Mrs. Jones, and it's like you need to then leverage those customers out eventually. It's like we're farming the customers who are willing to meet us at 5 to 5:30 in that random car park regardless of the weather and not be late. So we did that, and we would drop 5, 6, 7,000 euros of products in that half-hour window on some well-chosen, like it started actually in McDonald's car parks because that's on the way out of town. And we would go at the time when people finish work. So we're there in McDonald's car parks dropping pastured eggs and pastured poultry and vegetable bags. And it felt like, felt like really rebellious.
Yeah, it's probably the first time in a long time any of those people had stopped in that parking lot, perhaps, if ever.
But it worked really well, right? So that it took a lot of work and a lot of time invested in the beginning. But now we had an extremely efficient sales model. So we had it 1 hour in the summer, half an hour in the winter, because it's really cold here in the winter. And then our friend was making sourdough bread, really good bread, and standing on the market in our local town. So we would go to a few different towns because it's about 45 minutes away. There's a town of 75,000. 15 minutes away, there's a town of 10,000. Half an hour away, a town of 15,000. So we would go to those points. And our whole philosophy has been, we're going to sell within a 50-kilometer radius because we don't want to spend time in a car driving. And like, oh, you want to learn how to do this? Well, I'll teach you, but make sure you go 100 kilometers away and go do it over there so that I can keep doing it here. I've now filled up the REKO Rings with people I've trained to saturation point, but that's part of the intention in my case. Anyway, we haven't got to the REKO Rings yet. The baker was always standing there selling a perishable good on the market square, and we would come and he could see we're just dropping all this product. We emptied the whole van and we're gone, and we're like, dude, come sell bread with us. Like, we're going to this place, and this place. We drop it all off in half an hour. You don't have to stand here all day. You don't have to bring anything you haven't already sold. But it was a bit too, Swedish people are very
conservative,
ultra conservative. Yes. So they weren't really up for it. We asked a cheesemaker. We asked someone else, but no one was really up for it. And then REKO came along. And I wonder if I've got a little REKO book I could show you for people that are interested. I had it out the other day, but here it is. So REKO was developed by a man called Thomas Snellman. This is a little book that I was part of contributing towards. For people that are going to be interested to look this up more, you can find it online. It talks a bit about how it works, and it gives case studies from all over Europe. So Thomas Snellman was in Finland, and he was paid by the government to come up with a sort of circular economy way to deal with local food consumption. So REKO is what he came up with, and it works exclusively on Facebook. And that happens to work because most people at that age are on Facebook, so they don't have to do one extra click. And that's key, because people that have tried to mimic this with an extra click to another website doesn't really work. So you have a inward-facing group, and that's where we say, right, okay, we're going to sell, and we're going to say Thursdays 5 till 6 at this place, and we go to some coffee shop and we say, hey, can we have a couple of hundred people come meet here? You'll get the benefit of selling more coffee, and we'll be gone in 1 hour. People like that are like, yeah, that sounds great. Or an old car park behind a sports hall at a time that's not busy, or somewhere that makes sense. And we founded all the REKO Rings around us. There's 5 of them, and so we just made them the same time and place that we already did. And now, because it's got an official banner, the cheesemaker came, the baker came, the fishmonger came, there's charcuterie people, So now we've got a whole array of food. And then you have your outward-facing group, and it works on sort of copy and paste. I say, hey, Ridgedale Farm, we have pastured eggs. They cost this much for a tray of 30. Here's a little link to how we move our hens every day. We have vegetable bags. This week we're doing 10 varieties for this much. Special offer for midsummer, link to this, and whatever you've got. And then people say, okay, I want 2 chickens and tray of eggs and a big vegetable bag. And that is a sales contract. So that means you don't have any trading laws like a farmer's market or something like that. We're not going and selling anything. We're going to drop off things that are already technically sold, even though the payment happens there. So it makes it very easy from that perspective. And yeah, that's how it works. And so suddenly all these other people that wouldn't come before now come. So now it's like a critical mass is there that you can get enough of your weekly shop there that is worth going to. So it attracts more and more people. And we just outcompeted everyone because there'll be some guy in a filthy Volvo covered in cow shit, and he opens the boot and there's like some dirty eggs in the back, and it's like, no, hang on a minute, this is like really good quality food we're selling. So we're like putting our shirts on with our logo, we've cleaned the van before we go, we've put up little market stands with like what's up at the farm right now, and we treat it a bit more special, and so we just harvest everyone else's customers because we're doing a nicer job. And what's nice about it is it promotes a healthy competition because you can see everyone's purchases online. So you can see, my customer's going over there this week. Oh, they found a new way of bunching their salad bags. That looks pretty fancy. Oh, I'm going to do that too. And so it drives everyone in this kind of healthy competition.
Have you seen, Richard, like people in the US use that model? REKO?
Not many, but I've had students take it to South Africa, Australia. I think there's one in Canada, maybe. There's some around Europe, but I, to be honest, I'm out of touch with how the health of those are. There is a lady here in Canada, I believe, that's featured in the book.
No, we can't.
Her name is Nadia Smart. But this is just some, it's not all of them. But what's interesting about this is, there are hundreds of millions of dollars moving through this. There's 500 in Scandinavia. In Finland, it's something like 1 in 5 euros is spent at a REKO ring on the food market.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay,
That's
so
crazy.
That is crazy.
And the concept is really working. It's like it's a proof in the pudding concept.
I have never seen anywhere in the world a more efficient sales mechanism. It's like we stopped selling to restaurants and any wholesale. We just started funneling everything to this because it's super fun.
It almost sounds too good to be true, but I know it's working. It's just I guess it's probably the hardest thing is just getting it off the ground in a new place. Yes. There's an adoption aspect, whereas that's already been done in some places.
But this is crazy, right? In my in the bigger place, the city of Karlstad, there is 75,000 people. There's 18,000 people who have consciously gone and joined that group themselves.
Wow.
It's like over 1 in 5. It's like you couldn't market your products even if you paid better than that. It's like these are people who have individually gone and joined that group on their own volition. So it's pretty powerful.
I know it's probably too big of a topic because we're winding down on time and we'll have to get to rapid fire, but I just have one question on the REKO rings. How does one manage inventory? Because it sounds like if you're putting out, like how do not too many people come in and say what they want and then you don't have enough? You have to manage that. So there is, some people have written scripts to take the data out of there. So it takes a bit of time on that side, but not when you add up the whole, it's very efficient. But the trouble is when people, like some of those are easy technological things, but I tried to support a guy in Sweden in his startup of another system. It doesn't work as well because you have to do that extra click. And the thing I loved about REKO is that the farmer doesn't have to pay to use it. And nearly all of these services that you find,
some of them take up to 20% of the sales. It's like no farmer can afford to do that. So I don't support any system that the farmer has to pay for the privilege of selling. It's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I like this because of its simplicity. It's like, if I put out a sleek website for the benefit of all the farmers, it would be very hard to get 1 in 4.5 people in my local town to go look at that website.
That's true.
So yeah, manually I have to take some orders off, or I have to cut the sales at some point and be like, right, sold out. But bear in mind, these are the sort of, we're farming the types of customers that we want. And they're the sort of people that, say I sold 10 more chickens than I had, and I was like, oh, sorry, Dave, I haven't got any this week, I oversold. There's the sort of customers that are going to support, they get it. Mm-hmm. And so we've never had problems with that. The problems would be Mrs. Jones is late.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, first time, Mrs. Jones, like, we need to get back to the farm and do chores still. Like, we can wait here a few minutes, but like, okay, I'm coming. Okay. Second time, Mrs. Jones, we got to go back to the farm. You need to be here before 5:30. I'm leaving your bag at the door of the shop there. All right, see you, bye. Next time, it's like, Mrs. Jones, we don't have eggs for sale anymore. Like, sorry, we don't have enough for our subscribers. And then we just cull her out because that's not a good enough customer,
Mrs. Jones
so you have to be a little bit.
Poor Mrs.
You have to
Jones.
be a little bit, it's like you have to, same with the culling of livestock. You have to put fine lines to manage that well, I think.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say, Jam?
No, I'm impressed. Like I didn't know about that REKO, and I'm going to look into it.
It's hard to translate. I know a lot of students, because I used to do a lot of promotion of this around Europe, but also with students around the world. And I know that the critical thing is having a critical mass of producers. Like, you need a baker, you need someone doing dairy, someone doing charcuterie, you need different meats, you need different veg, eggs.
Yeah, it's like a farmer's market. You need a farmer's market.
Choice.
It's a food hub, but without the added click because it's on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have some local people, producers, but only of one thing that do sell through Facebook, like kind of ask people to place an order, as far as I know. But no one... Yeah.
Then what would happen is then I'm training up people, people are coming to our farm and they're getting all the back-end spreadsheets and planning and finances, and then they've got what's amazing is that they've got their sales and marketing platform already built for them in Scandinavia. So people have come here on a 4-day poultry training, started a business at full scale that I've built up over several years, and they don't have to do any marketing or sales at all. It's amazing.
Yeah, and with meat chickens, I mean, selling it's probably a lot harder than doing the actual growing because it's so fast and it's just fairly simple, eh?
Yeah, I've really come to realize that the missing... I don't know the missing link, but the propeller of all the things that we're doing in farming is really the sales. Like the production side, like I've been working really hard to look at production and how to improve it, how to streamline it. But in the end, it boils down to sales and markets. And that's really where, I've come to realize that that's where there needs to be breakthrough, because all the small farms here, and whenever we're hearing that they're struggling, and then some of these farmers are very, very unaware of messaging and comms, and so they'll be out there. It's our work of line is so hard. We're working 20 hours a day. We're struggling. No. But they never talk about the fact that they're not selling enough. That's why they're struggling. It's really never production. It's like when everything sells, man, it's not that complicated to make it work.
No, farmers love to be victims all over the world, don't they? But
they're all the same.
I always joke, it's like we take a lot of credit for things that we don't actually do. Like, it's not very hard to grow a lettuce or produce an egg. It's like you don't actually have to do very much. Like, a lettuce knows how to grow and a chicken knows how to lay an egg. And we don't need to take credit for that. It's like making the business work. That's impressive. And, sales is half the work. And I think a trend that's going to come along, we live in an increasingly time-starved, all these lovely innovations we've been told to buy and subscribe to are making us busier and busier, and that doesn't seem like that's going to change. And I think probably the way it's going to go here, I don't know if it's different market there, but moving towards more convenience, where you get together with some of your other farms and you provide, ready portioned meal subscriptions, things like that. I think that's probably where a lot of this is going to go in the future.
Agreed.
Because people are, yeah.
All right, rapid fire.
It's Richard, we do rapid fire at the end of our podcast. These are like quick questions where you don't need to think too much. And if you don't have the answer, we can pass.
Yeah,
sure.
And you don't have to be that fast. You can elaborate if you wish. What's a book that you've either read multiple times or just one that has been on your mind a lot lately?
One that I love and is my next writing project to update, is George Henderson's The Farming Ladder.
Don't
know if you know this
classic.
book.
A classic of the classic.
Very classic book. And I was in touch with the man that runs his old estate and asked if I could use the title to write a modern version after being likened to him by several people. And so I've actually put together a draft for the book, and that's going to be my next project, a bit more prose based.
Wow, so and that book is,
book that I love.
What's the basic plot and idea of the book?
He was an innovator back in the 40s, and during the austere time of the Second World War, he was running thriving business. He was doing pastured poultry and movable pens. He made money on farm inventions as well as breeding heirloom animals, mixed farmer. And his journey into farming with his brother, I mean, they made a plan as teenagers of how to afford a farm starting from nothing, and they just carried that out. And then he ended up training new young farmers, and I just share a lot of his love for the countryside and for the farm life, but also attention to details, finances, time and motion studies, and these kind of things.
Did you read Adrian Bell?
It's a classic book.
Have you read Adrian Bell? Adrian Bell, the English author. Have you read him from the 1930s and 40s and 50s? Oh, okay. Well, it's similar. An English author from the 20s through 50s really wrote a lot during the war about English countryside living and farming. Anyway.
Richard, when your new book comes out, make sure to have a U.S. tour, which includes a little trip at the old mill.
Yeah.
So that we can talk about the book in person and have a good meal together.
That sounds fantastic.
What's advice you heard when you were really young that you only appreciated much later in life?
Oh, gosh. I think my parents were very sincere, and I would have taken, I can't quite answer that question, but I took my advice very seriously, and I didn't ignore any of it, but I took it to heart and very much. And my father always taught me only to ever spend money that I already had. And that's something I am very much, I mean, we haven't talked about the financial side of restaurants, but I'm pushed myself in closer to complete failure than ever before. And I think about that often. I'm spending money that I don't actually have.
Oh, it's almost the opposite of the question. What's advice you heard and once heeded that now you're letting go of, which also is a valuable question too, because different people maybe reacted to advice differently, different times. What's advice that you give often to people?
What don't you need to do? Like how small can you go, and what don't you need to do?
Do you have an example?
Because I've always prefaced my video library in the past with like, hey, this farm is not a farm I would set up if I was trying to make a family living. I could do that with my hens, with my broilers, with my market garden. It's like I'm specifically setting this up so that you can learn about how this interacts with that and it all fits together in a system. But if I just wanted to make a living, I would only do one thing here. That's not really why I set my farm up. I wanted to set up a little revolution. And despite having said that thousands of times on videos, some people want to just do what they see here. And it's like, no, you don't need to do all this. It's like, it's a lot of work and you get a lot of extra wrinkles for making it more complex than you need to.
What are people not talking about enough?
They're complex traumas that they bring into this alternative space. Like one thing that I think I'm going to start talking a lot more about publicly is I'm very interested in psychology, and having been a mentor in this space for 15, 20 years, I think nearly everyone I've ever met in the alternative agriculture space comes with complex trauma, and it's something that we started weaving into our programs here, and it's amazing because it fits so well with the premise of regenerating the landscape too. And we can't act with our full intelligence or capacity until we do work with those things. So that's something I'm much more interested to engage with, and I think is not spoken enough about in society in general, but in this movement particularly.
What's a nature experience that really sticks out in your memory from your lifetime?
Feeding fish. So these trout, rainbow trout, that had escaped from a fish farm and lived in a tiny brook in my village. And I used to sneak down there. I was always a fisherman, so I used to sneak down and feed them bread. And I grew these rainbow trout into full-size trout in a tiny little stream, like barely deep enough for them. And it stands out for me because I was very, very young at this time, and yet I learned my innate relationship with the world around me. It's like I can direct this, and that's exactly the feeling I get when I plan farms and work with the livestock here and all the plants here. It's like I am very sure about my relationship with this ecosystem around me.
What's the best food experience you've had in the last year?
Oh, probably quite boring. I mean, I love the beef I have here. I have old heritage Swedish mountain cows, and I have forest raised pork. I'm a stickler for, I can eat pork belly most days of the week. I can eat my beef every day of the week. I like simple. I like, one of my favorite things, absolutely favorite things, is raw beef.
More
and
beef.
I've studied all the different raw beef recipes from around the world, and I think the Southeast Asian versions are my favorite. But I eat that a lot.
What's a great difficult decision you've made where at the time it was a super hard decision, but then afterward it turned out to be for the best and it led you somewhere better?
To come back to the farm, I recently was going to leave the farm and just leave everything I've built up here behind to fulfill my introvert dreams. But I came back to the farm, and that was powerful.
Interesting. Could you share just a moment about that? What was happening? Why were you being pulled away, and then what then pulled you back so quickly?
Well, like I ended the relationship that I was in when I set up the farm, and that's it. It left some of the meaning of creating this place. Like I decided to be a farmer at 15, and I wanted to be a farmer to build a habitat to raise kids in. That's like my whole journey is based on that. So it kind of lost the feeling of, it's like I'm a foreigner in a foreign country in the middle of rural nowhere. And so I felt like, okay, maybe now I move on from here, like, and go start a different thing, like with a bit more culture and a bit more proximity to things I'm familiar with. And then I was in Mexico teaching a course at a wonderful farm there, Las Cañadas, and I was sleeping. My daughter had come with me, and 2 o'clock in the morning, she had a breakdown in the bunk above me. She was like, "I want to go back to the farm," and I had a breakdown, and I was like, "So do I." And we just decided we're like coming back, and so I'd taken a pause from the farm, but then we started it up again last year, and it's I feel very well and at peace and content and fulfilled when I'm here. So it was a good decision.
I'm super happy to hear that. It's really nice.
Yeah. Final question. What's something you're really into, maybe even obsessed, that's different than farming and the things we've spoken about today?
I'm very interested in this topic of like exploring past, like archaeology, anthropology. I'm very curious around these topics and how they play into food. And how, like, I guess the convergence of neuroscience and archaeology and anthropology. That's what I spend most of my time thinking and looking at. Like, I don't listen to many farming podcasts, or I don't follow farming stuff. I follow my other interests because I spend my whole life farming. And that's what I'm very interested about.
Awesome.
All right, Richard. So it was a great talk. I got to know you so much more, just like having this conversation with you. And wish you all the best with the restaurant. Keep us posted. If there's anything that we can do to help promote it, down all the way up here, we'll do it. We definitely want to come and visit. I don't know how this is going to happen, Chris, but let's make a wish that we ended up
Sillegarden.
Sillegarden.
So, well, to the Anglophone.
Gård is
Gård.
like a farm.
All right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I was just going to thank you for your time, Richard.
Yeah.
And we
Thank you
went
for your
fairly
time.
long.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This was a great episode. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and Instagram and all these social media platforms. Makes a difference. And on YouTube, I think it's important for people to subscribe and like the channel. Gives us the signal that you guys are into it. And we'll have another great one next time. See you all. See you later, guys.
Ciao.
Hope you're enjoying the podcast. These are important conversations, and we're really excited to have them and to share them with everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to it, download the episodes, and please rate them. It makes a difference for us. We want to know what you think about these conversations. They're important. Check out the work that we do at the Market Gardener Institute. You can check out our website, themarketgardener.com. Our mission is to multiply the number of small ecological farms around the world. And we do this by offering training, online courses to new aspiring farmers, but also to seasoned growers. We're helping them take it to the next level. So you can check out the work that we do. You can follow us on social media. You can sign up to our newsletter to get a lot of freebies about gardening, farming, but also about how small-scale farming is changing the world. And that's really what we're all about, and that's really what this is all about. So again, thank you for tuning in. Super excited that you guys are on board. We are changing the world.